Hey guys, welcome to Motorides. My name is Amit and this is the Yezdi Scrambler. एक और बात, अगर ये वीडियो आप हिंदी में देखना चाहते हैं तो अब हमारा Motorides हिंदी चैनल चालू हो चुका है। तो इस पूरे वीडियो को आप हिंदी में वहाँ जाकर के देख सकते हैं। अब आपके पास कोई बहाना नहीं बचा है, तो वहाँ जाकर के आप सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और हमारे वीडियोस हिंदी में देखिए। Now the 350cc segment, especially in this retro styled kind of a package, has traditionally been dominated by the classic 350, wherein you saw the advent of new motorcycles like the Java 42 and the CB Highness, the Meteor as well. The new classic 350 is here, but all of these motorcycles are more or less the same wine in a new bottle. So when you come across something which essentially is more or less the same template but comes in a refreshing new packaging and makes you think that probably it's going to be the same experience, it's quite a surprise when you sit on the motorcycle, take it out for a ride, and it puts a broad smile on your face. After such a long time, I rode a 350cc motorcycle and it really plastered a big smile on my face, because this motorcycle can do a lot more than your regular 350cc motorcycle. And in that sense, this is a breeze of fresh air. And for those of you who are looking for something which is really fun, very practical, can do a lot of things and still has a personality of its own, this motorcycle is going to tick all the right boxes. I've ridden this motorcycle off the road, on the road, and I can tell you that there is absolutely no other motorcycle like this one in the market right now. And if you're looking for something which can do it all and has a character, a personality of its own, the Yezdi Scrambler has hit the nail right on the head. So let's talk about what makes this motorcycle special. And if you compare the three motorcycles from the Yezdi stable which have been introduced just now, this has the shortest wheelbase, just about 1400 mm, much shorter than the Adventure. The ground clearance here is very generous, though 200 mm, which allows it to go over bad surfaces, over rocks, and it can do a fair bit of off-roading as well. You can ride the pegs. As you can see, you have these teeth on the pedals as well as the pegs, which means that you can ride the pegs, and this motorcycle is endowed with the capability to go over bad surfaces, and it can do a very good job of it as well. In terms of the engine, this is the same engine which has been used on the other two Yezdis as well. However, on this motorcycle, the torque curve is much flatter. The power output here is 29.1 PS at 8000 RPM, and the peak torque is 28.2 Newton meters at 6750 Newton meters. Now, the peak torque is produced about 250 RPM more over the Adventure, and which means that the torque curve is flatter, it lasts longer, like the torque is available over a longer rev band. And in terms of styling, this is a typical Scrambler unit. I have done a walk around video of this motorcycle where I talked about the styling features of this motorcycle, but in this video I'll talk about how this motorcycle performs. And the most striking thing about this motorcycle is how it handles when you get astride this motorcycle. The suspension, the chassis, the low center of gravity makes you feel very connected with the road. This flat handlebar as you go around bends makes you feel like you're very connected with the road, and when you lean over a set of bends, it eggs you on to go faster. The sense of connection that you have with the tar, the feedback that you get from the steering is really amazing, and you really get a sense of connection with the road, and that really makes this motorcycle very special. Around bends, the low center of gravity and a very planted stance that this motorcycle has, along with these very capable set of tires, makes it a joy to ride. So if you're going around a sweeping set of corners, this motorcycle is really going to make you smile. It's going to give you an experience which you probably will not experience on any other similar motorcycle. In fact, there is no other direct competitor to this motorcycle. This can do a lot of stuff on the road and is pretty capable off the road as well. A lot of credit for that should go to these block pattern tires. Up front you have these MRF tires which are 100 sections, and at the rear you have 140 section tires which are MRFs again. Now up front you have a 19 incher, unlike the Adventure, and at the rear you have 17 inches. Both these wheels have spokes and they come with tubed tires. There is ample grip available, and I really like the wheel and tire setup on this motorcycle. The suspension travel also, if you compare with the Roadster, is longer, and which really allows it to go over bad surfaces very capably. You also have this raised fender here. This isn't metal, this is metal though, and this here isn't metal either. This too is plastic. So that's the metallic composition of the panels of this motorcycle, and stylistically it resembles the Ducati Scrambler. If you think that these knuckle guards are standard, they are not, they're accessories. So is this grille. The lights here are LED, the blinkers are LEDs, the blinkers at the rear, and the tail light also is LED here. This motorcycle also gets twin exhausts, and I'm pretty sure that most of you want to listen to this exhaust note as well. So let's fire this up quickly and figure out how good or bad this exhaust is. You also get a side stand engine inhibitor when the gear is engaged. Now that exhaust is quite nice, although I really like the exhaust on the Adventure a little bit more because there is more bass there, it is more meaty. This exhaust is also quite nice. The tank here is 12.5 liters, and with a fuel efficiency of about 35 km PL, you should be able to get a range of 400 kilometers or thereabouts. The mirrors here are not the most functional. They could probably have been wider, although they do a fair job of showing you what's coming from behind. The mirrors on the Adventure though are more practical, they're wider and they're bigger too. This handlebar is quite flat, and the seat height here is lower as compared to the Adventure. This is 800 mm, which is not the lowest, but still for the shorter rider should not be too much of a problem. If you're 5'6", 5'5", you should be fine. I'm 5'10", and I can barely touch my heels to the ground. Shorter riders also can ride this motorcycle, but if you're shorter than 5'6", you will probably have a bit of a problem. Now, unlike the Adventure, this motorcycle does not come with a very highly functional instrument console. This gets this circular instrument console, which gives you a lot of information. It gets 2 trip meters, and it gets an odo, it gets a gear position indicator, tacho, speedo. There's a clock here, there's a fuel gauge, and it also comes with 3 modes. So you have road mode, you have rain mode, and you also have an off-road mode. In the rain mode, the ABS kicks in more quickly, and in the off-road mode, you can switch off the ABS at the rear. But you don't get distance to empty or average fuel efficiency on this motorcycle, which is available on Adventure. Also, you don't get Bluetooth connectivity or turn-by-turn navigation, which is available on the Adventure. So in terms of functionality, this instrument console is not as good as the one on the Adventure. Coming to the seat, this is a ribbed seat, and for the rider this is fairly comfortable. For the pillion 2, this should be okay for short distances, but it's a slanting seat, it's a one-piece seat, and since there is a certain slant to the seat, this seat probably would not be very comfortable for medium to long journeys. This motorcycle does not lend itself very well as a long distance tourer per se. This is more of a fun machine that you can probably use for your daily commute as well, and then when you want to take it out for a weekend or on an off-road trail, it should be able to do its job pretty well. So in that sense, this seat is okay. It's not too high. A pillion should be able to swing a leg over the pillion seat without much problem, but this seat not one of the most comfortable seats that you would come across. You also get these grab rails or grab bars which the pillion can hold on to. Twin exhaust, as I mentioned, and apart from that you get a twin channel ABS, 320 mm disc up front and a 240 mm at the rear, and you also get these gas charged shock absorbers at the rear. These are 5-step adjustable, and at this point in time they are set at the 3rd stiffest setting, and at that setting this feels just fine. It's slightly on the firmer side, not the cushiest, but you can go 2 notches down and the suspension will be a little bit more comfortable. I don't really have any complaints per se about the comfort on this motorcycle. It's reasonably firm, it's not too cushy, and that really lends this motorcycle very good dynamic ability. As I mentioned, the tires here are very good, and when you show it a set of bends, the short wheelbase and these really nice tires along with a very beautifully set up chassis and suspension makes this motorcycle a joy to ride, and for what it's meant to do, it does its job really well. Especially off the road, this motorcycle is pretty capable, and I took it out on some trails, did some light off-roading on this motorcycle, and it took everything in its stride very well. In fact, if you talk about going over some inclines and taking air time, this motorcycle is a little bit better than the Adventure in terms of taking air, and for the most part can do a lot of stuff that its bigger brother the Adventure can, and it's a pretty capable motorcycle. It doesn't have that protective exoskeleton that the Adventure comes with, but it does have this bash plate which protects it from damage to the engine. Again, the engine here is a liquid cooled unit, and it's not bestowed with a lot of torque at the bottom of the rev range. It's not an engine which is long stroke, so you really have to boil the engine up a little bit to get the kind of torque or power that you require to go off-roading. So in that sense, at all times you have to keep the engine above 2000 rpm or the engine will stall. Above 2000 rpm it smoothens out a little bit. Below that there's a lot of knocking happening. 3000 rpm onwards the engine really starts building some power. 5000 rpm onwards you do get a bit of shove. 6000 rpm onwards all the way to 8000 rpm you get a very strong surge. This motorcycle has a very strong mid-range, and the engine is capable of propelling it to some really fast speeds from a standstill very quickly. And talking specifically about gear speeds, the gear speeds between this motorcycle and the Adventure are not very different. This motorcycle is pretty similar in behavior, as the size of the rear wheel is the same as the Adventure, the gearing is the same. So in the end the performance not very different if you go to see. First gear will take you to 45 kilometers per hour. In fact, there is a very minor difference, 1 to 2 kilometers of difference, wherein the speeds in every gear are slightly lower in this motorcycle. So while the Adventure attains 45, this attains 44. While the Adventure attains 70 kilometers per hour in the second gear, this one attains 69. So there's a very minor difference, but more or less the performance is very perceptibly the same. So first gear 45, second gear 70, third gear 90, and fourth gear 110, fifth gear 130, and the top speed of this motorcycle should be about 140 or thereabouts. So that's about the performance, but there is some vibrations coming in at about 6,500 rpm. Not bothersome, but very mild vibrations which can be felt. It's also similar to the Adventure. It's not a deal breaker at all, but there are some mild vibes to be felt at the pegs and at the tank. Talking about the tank, these really nice recesses allow you to tuck your knees in very nicely and feel very nice, especially when you are riding it on the highway. This motorcycle also comes with a slip and assist clutch, which is an very amazing feature, although it does not have the Bluetooth connectivity with which a lot of other 350cc motorcycles these days come equipped with, and that definitely is an omission. Talking about the switchgear here, the quality here is pretty decent, although the fit and finish at some other places like these weld marks and a few other small things could probably have been better finished, but the switchgear quality here seems to be pretty decent. You have an engine kill switch, you have a hazard, you have this electric starter, buttons to navigate through the electronic instrument console, high beam, low beam and day flasher are integrated here. Horn sounds so, and this is the turn indicator. The fuel tank lid is not a hinged type and you really have to take it off. It's a solid piece though, and it's made of metal covered with chrome and feels nice to hold. This motorcycle also comes with this USB port as a standard fitment. You have these two ports, one standard USB and one type C, and that's a great feature to have if you want to charge any of your electronic equipment. What really makes this motorcycle special for me is that it feels very connected to the road, and not just on the road, off the road also. It's a ton of fun, and in conditions like these where you want to take it off the road and do some light off-roading, it comes across as a very capable machine. You can ride the pegs very easily, although the handlebar here is not as high as the Adventure. It's pretty low, but you can still reach out to it, and while riding the pegs and riding the motorcycle standing, it does come across as a very confident machine. It comes across as a very capable machine. The block pattern tires, the generous ground clearance and the very beautifully set up chassis makes it a very versatile machine. And for those of you who want to do a lot of things with your motorcycles, this is going to be a machine which you can take to your commute to work, for a weekend ride, or for some off-roading expeditions as well. So it's a very versatile machine and quite unlike anything else that you have on the market right now. And for that reason alone, if you're not looking for something which you want to use purely as a tourer or for tour-up riding most of the times, I can recommend this machine to a vast majority of users. It's got a lot of character, has great performance, can reach respectable triple-digit speeds very quickly. Fuel efficiency is good, and most of all, it can do a lot of things which a lot of other motorcycles don't. Comes with a 6-speed transmission, which is pretty good. The clutch action is pretty light. Won't be much of a problem to be riding within the city. The engine doesn't heat up. So all of these things really make it a beautiful motorcycle which can do a lot of things for you. In terms of pricing, this is placed higher above the Roadster and below the Adventure. So the pricing starts from 2.04 lakh rupees and goes to 2.1 lakh rupees. And if you compare it with some other 350cc motorcycles, those motorcycles are slightly cheaper. But then again, those motorcycles are not exactly comparable with this machine because this can do a lot more than your vanilla 350cc motorcycle. Just to talk about a few complaints, maybe this engine could have been a little bit more refined. There could have been a little bit more low-end torque because this motorcycle is meant to do a bit of off-roading as well. But then this is a liquid-cooled engine and it's meant to be a little bit on the peakier side. I'm really not complaining, but had it been a little bit more sophisticated in terms of the refinement of the engine and low-end torque, it probably would have been even better for me. In terms of color, this motorcycle is available in fire orange, outlaw olive, yelling yellow and midnight blue colors, and the dual tone colors include rebel red and mean green. In terms of tractability, this is quite similar to the Adventure, and in the 6th gear you have to keep it above 55 kilometers per hour, in the 5th gear 45 kilometers per hour, and in the 4th gear you have to keep it about 35 kilometers per hour to keep it moving, otherwise it will start knocking and making a lot of clanking noises. The warranty here is 2 years or 24 months, and all in all this comes across as a fantastic package, a very solid machine, something which is very different from whatever else you have available in the market. And I can really recommend this motorcycle for those of you who want something more from your motorcycle. This can do a lot of stuff which your regulation motorcycle cannot, and it's a lot of fun. It really is a motorcycle which will put a big broad smile on your face. I really hope that this video was able to answer all the questions you had about this beautiful machine here. In case you have any questions or queries which were not answered in this review, you can put them down in the comment section. And if you like this video, do not forget to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends and family. And until next time, this is Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.